So our daf for today is Kuf Dalid, but we have to start here where we left off on Kuf Gimel Amid Beis, Omar Rav Bibi, Omar Rav Yeshua ben Levi. So I guess you'd like count up a few lines from the bottom, maybe 6 lines up from the bottom before it gets wide. Maise b'preda achas shel beis Rebbe. So there was a mule in the house of Rebbe, and it seems like the posek for Rebbe, which is a little bit of a chiddush for us, was Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira, and they had a shaila. What was to happen? The mule died, and the question is whether or not someone who lifts up the dam of the deceased mule would become tummy. And normally the minimum volume of dam for tuma is a revius. The shiru chacham is dom revius, and after making a calculation, they came to the conclusion that there was a revius dam that was collected after the mule died, and they seem to have therefore come to the conclusion that it would be mitame. So the Gemara asks, what's going on over here? Masiv Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna, Heid Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira, al dam nevelos shutar. The Torah says that the basar of the nevela, if you lift it up, let's say b'masa and so forth, you're tummy, but not the dam. The Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira, Ma'asav hayu nocharim arodios larayos. This apparently was going on in the, I guess, in the Roman military. They would, they would use spears and kill these mules. B'yistaria shel melech, ba'yu ole regalim, and because of this sport, I guess, when the ole regalim came on aliyah to the regal, they were shkuim, they were sunk into the blood, rechuvoseim b'dam, up to their knees, and lo ambulem chachamim dover. The chacham didn't tell them, wait, you're coming on aliyah to the regal for aliyah regal and you're tameh. They didn't say that to them. So apparently you see that the dam of the veil is not metame. Ishtik. Rav Bibi didn't know how to give an answer. And Amalei Rav Zrika, my time aloka mahadar ma. Why didn't you give him the right answer? Why were you quiet? Amalei Hechadar, what should I have answered him? Ti Omar Rebbe Chanin, Vahoyu Chayecha. Okay, so now the Gemara is going through a pasuk in the Tochacha, and darshaning various parts of this pasuk, taking it apart like piece by piece. Let's just see the pasuk. It says, "Vayu chayecha tluim lecha mineged." Your life is hanging in a balance. V'zel okeach. This is referring to someone who's tfua mishana l'shana. He's so poor that he doesn't have enough grains from one year to the other. But the Tochacha goes even stronger than that. He doesn't have enough grains in his house to last for more than a week. And then the worst level of this kloa is we're talking about someone who doesn't have enough bread to go from one day to the next. He just has to hope that the baker will have fresh bread for that day. It'll be able to buy bread for that day. And here we turn to Daf Kuf Dalid. Vahu Gabran, he's talking about himself in third person. Al Palter Samach. I'm in that lowest financial category in which I have to rely on a daily basis to buy bread from the baker. And therefore I can't give an answer to this question. But my Havi Allah. So what was the right answer to this question? Rav Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda Morionov Debei Rab Nasiya Hava. And I'm not sure if this Rabbi Yehuda was mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, Heid Rabbi Yehuda. So I said it was Rabbi Yoshua, but it's really Rabbi Yehuda. And he testifies, because he was the final posek for the Beis Nasi, Orilon Kishmaita. and he taught us l'chumra that why did they measure the dam from the mule that died in Rebbe's house? And the answer is because they held, based on the instruction, the psak, and the ruling of Rabbi Yehuda, that the dam of nevela, even though we had doubts about it, but apparently Rabbi Yehuda may have given his opinion, but the bottom line is that the halach accepts that it's tameh. Disanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shisha Dvar Mikuli Beit Shammai Chumri Beis Hillel. Normally, under almost 99.9% of the cases, Beit Shammai is lechumra and Beis Hillel are the mekilim, but there are six exceptions to that rule. And dam nevelos Beit Shammai mitarin uBeis Hillel mitamin. So that even though Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that the dam of a nevela is not mitame, but we paskin like Beis Hillel that it is mitame. Rav Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, af kshe Beis Hillel, lo timu el brevius, hol v'yochel likrosh v'lamed al kezayis. So in truth, the real shear of Kabbalah's Tuma is a kezayis, but if you have a revius dam, it could congeal and harden if you don't continuously mix it, and then a revius of dam will become a kezayis of dam. So the bottom line seems to be that the halacha was like Beis Hillel, and it's one of the rare cases that he's machmir, and that's why in the Beis Rebbe, when the mule died, they were actually measuring it out to see if there was a revius of dam. Okay, now we start the Mishnah here on Daf Kuf Dalid, the subject of which is nidava. And the question is, first and foremost, whether, what can you donate through a neder, through an adova? And the Mishnah establishes that ein misnavnim log. So now we're talking about how much of a yayin l'nesachim has to accompany a mincha, and again, there are many different factors that will determine it. But the question is, when he takes a nedava, for some reason, which we'll see in a minute, it's got to be not one log or two logs or five logs. It could be 3, 4, and 6. And then mishisha lamal, anything above sheish. Why is this so? So this has to do with the fact that we don't want an adava to exceed beyond a chova. And the chova, just one second, I'm sorry, something caught my eye from the Gemara beforehand. Oh, okay. I just for the record, not that it matters, the names here are not that important, but it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira and Rabbi Yeshua. They are of the opinion that dam is not mitame. They had a different tradition of Beis Hillel. The dam of an avela is not mitame. But Rabbi Yehuda, this is where I made my mistake. He was of the opinion, as we had the transmission, that according to Beis Hillel, it is mitame. That's why they measured the. Okay, now, what are the options of nisachim? How many lugim of yain? So the Torah establishes that in the case of a zevach, of a behema, if it's a keves, then you bring three lugim. If it's an ayal, you bring four lugim, and if it's a par, you bring six lugim. So if you want to donate nisachim, you're stuck with those amounts, which are three, four, or six, and anything greater than six, because that couldn't even be offered as niskei yayin to accompany a korban. So you can donate seven lugim, and also if you would combine, let's say, a korban of both an ayil and a keves, which would be three plus four lugim, so you can bring seven, or you can bring eight because that corresponds to two ayals. Each one is four lugim, and nine would correspond to a keves, which is three lugim plus a par, which is six lugim, so you got nine, and it keeps going on and on. But five lugim cannot be offered for a voluntary nesech, a voluntary libation, because that doesn't fit into any of the possible volumes of lugim that you bring for yain nesachim for a zevach, whether it's a keves, an ayal, or bakar, or a par. So again, let's go over it. You could be misnadev three, four, six, because those correspond to the nisachim of a keves, that's three, of an ayal, that's four, of a par, that's six, and mishish l'mala, anything above six, because you could have those combinations. Okay, now the Gemara says Iboil. We vacillate about the following question of a nedava of nesachim. Yesh kval nesachim or ein kval nesachim. So he took upon himself a voluntary a neder to bring a certain amount of lugim, and the question is whether or not it's keva. And keva means a fixed amount. Meaning, let's say, for example, he took upon himself to bring three lugim. He's got to bring the three lugim, if you hold yesh keva, all at the same time. If, on the other hand, you hold ein keva l'nesachim, then he could bring one lug, he could bring another lug, and then a third lug. He doesn't have to bring them all at the same time. So the Gemara has sechidomi. Kigon di aise chamisha. I give a case where he took an nadav on three lugim, but let's say he took an nadav to bring five lugim. Iamrid ein keval l'nesachim meshechu makriv arba minayhu, so that he can divide it up into bringing four. Now, this is very strange because he took upon himself to bring five lugim, but we said that he can't bring five lugim. But if you hold ein keval l'nesachim, then he can bring four out of the five, makrav minayu. And why? Because that parallels the ayil. But what about the fifth lug? Idach havi nedava. He can give the fifth lug as an nedava. Now, what does that mean? He can't take the fifth lug onto the mizbeach as nisuch, because we said that five is excluded. So what does he do? He brings the four lugim, and the extra lug, that fifth lug, has to be sold on the market. And then its money goes into the Trumas Halishka to buy Karbanos Hatzibur. Now, there's another possibility that last lug could, could be combined with, let's say, the lugim of a carbon tamid. So let's say the lugim of a carbon tamid, which is a carbonat tzibur, is with a keves, which is three lugim. So he'll add his fifth lug together with two lugim for the carbon for the carbon tzibur of a talmid, such that now even his fifth lug will be subject to libation on the mizbeach. Be'iyamrit yesh kevel l'nesachim, but if on the other hand you hold yesh keva, is then he can't bring the five lugim, and he can't bring less than the five lugim. Ad mimali lahu lo karve. The only thing he could do is he can add another lug, jack it up to six lugim, and then he can do yayin nesech, he can do nisuch hayayin, and fulfill his neder with six lugim. But no way, no how could he divide up the five lugim. He can add to the five lugim and jack it up to six, but he can't subdivide the five lugim and break it down into 4+1. What's the halacha? Rabbi Toshma, I'll bring you a Mishnah, which is in Shkolim, Perak Shishi, that Shisha Linidava. Now, what's Shisha Linidava? I mean, can I get me? So we didn't go through the Mishnayos in Shkolim, but the Mishnayos in Shkolim established that there are 13 different shofros in the Lishka. And you have to know exactly what each one was for. But there were 6 shofros that were used for voluntary karbonos. But I'm not sure exactly which voluntary karbonos you're allowed to purchase with this with the 6 shofros that we're talking about. And the number 6 parallels the various types of karbonos tzibur that there are. Number 1, keneged mosar chatos. Now, in each one of these karbonos is something called mosar. Now, mosar means that, let's say he designated a certain animal for the carbon tzibur, but it was lost. And in the meantime, he designated, let's say, another carbon, and then he found the original carbon. Let me just read to you what he says over here. Again, this is going to be a Gemara later on, but the Gemara quotes Rav Oshia here on Daf Kuf Daled, who says that the 6 shofars correspond to the 6 possible situations in which a person could find himself in possession of funds for voluntary communal offerings. Each of these situations is a result of a case in which a person had designated money for the purpose of purchasing a carbon, but in the end, he had excess money. So I said excess money is because he has another carbon, that replaced the original carbon. He's saying excess money because he didn't need all that money to buy the carbon. So a person was magdish money, he designated money for bringing a certain carbon. Now, although that amount of money was perfectly aligned with the price of that animal, but the price of the animal might go down until he actually is makravit due to fluctuations in the market conditions. And now he could buy the carbon for less money. So he had designated more money. He's left with excess money that's designated for a carbon. That's kedusha. So in six specific cases, the halacha is that that money, that's extra money, could be used to purchase voluntary olos. That means olos binidava, but for the sake of the tzibur. That's called ketz hamizbeach. And in ketz hamizbeach, when the mizbeach is sitting around, so to speak, idle, you bring these karbanos, olos. They're burnt on the mizbeach, and the or is given to the kohen. So now we're saying that there was a collection of this money put in a shofar to receive the money to buy uh, karbanos for the tzibur. And these are the six cases. So we have Mosar Chatos, Mosar Hashomos, Mosar Hasham Nazir, Mosar Hasham Mitzorim, Mosar Kinim, Mosar Minchas Chote. So again, just to give one example, let's say a person was a chote, he sets aside money to purchase, let's say, keves or a gedi, a sayer, for a chatos, and now he's left with excess money. Same thing if, let's say, he was in violation of a carbon of an avera for a carbon asham, and he has left excess money, or Nazir became tummy, he has to bring a whole bunch of carbonos. And let's say he designated money for carbon asham, for example, and then it went down in price and so forth. So left with the excess, and then the money goes into this thing. Fine. Now we get back to Abai. Im Isa. If you're going to tell me that yesh keval in Esachim, I'm sorry. If you're going to, let's go through the upslug, for the negative. If you were to say ein kevel in Esachim, so then Abai asks the following question: Liskin shofar achrini. There should have been a seventh shofar, right? How many do we say there were? Only six, right? And now Abai is saying there should have been a seventh one, Keneged Mosa Nesachim. Mosa Nesachim doesn't appear on the list. And now we're saying that if you hold Ein Keval Nesachim, that means that the last log of the five, right? Because he donated five lugim. Then if you hold Ein Keval Nesachim, the last one goes into that pot for the purpose of buying a carbon tzibur. So there should have been a shofar for that one. And Gemara says, no. Hanach linidvas tzibur asli. He says what's unique about the number six, and the reason why there are only six, is because the extra. Just one second. Which one is shchiach and which is no shchiach? In the case in the sachim, it's shchiach. So he's saying, Hanach, these are unusual cases, right, of the Nazir and the Chote and the one who has to bring a carbon asham and so forth and so on, where there's extra money, Mosar, that goes for a communal carbon. That's not common. Therefore, they have to be stored for future use, and that necessitated creation of the chest. But Hani, in the case of Nesech, of excess lugim of niske yayin, shchichi. Why is it so shchiach? He says because all ola and shlomim karbonos, which are being brought constantly throughout the day by numerous individuals for a variety of reasons, are accompanied by nesachim. So therefore, it's common for people to mistakenly consecrate too many lugim for their carbon. And therefore, efsha de mitztarfe demar udemar bahari adodi ukrevi. Right? What happens is that we don't need an extra shofar for that because it's very possible to combine that extra lug with another person's extra lug. So let's say there are three people who have the Mosar Nesachim with an extra lug. So we'll gather together and integrate these three lugim, and we'll bring them on the mizbeach because, as we said, there could be three lugim. The only thing that bothers me here is then it would have to be a carbon shutfim. Just one second. Ah, remember we said that the Talmud, the carbon Talmud, needs three lugim. So if you have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, each one has an extra lug because he dedicated five logim. So we'll just put together Reuven, Shimon, and Levi's extra log, and we have three logim for the carbon Talmud. Amar Rav, Tashma Rav wants to quote a different brisa in order to prove that that ein keval in a. Okay, so for this we have to know a pasuk in Bamidbar. Let's see if I can find the pasuk here without having to. Anyway, it says. Just trying to see if I have it here. Kol ezrach yase kocha es elu lahakiv ishe reach nichoch Lashem. Okay. Now, this pasuk comes at the very conclusion of the parsha of Nisachim, and it's superfluous. So we're going to darshan every word. Ezrach malamich misnadvim Nisachim. Okay. So that's the word Ezrach. V'kama shlosha lugim. I don't know why he mentions only shlosha lugim. Okay, fine. Right, because less than shlosha lugim, he certainly can't donate. Fine. Uminayin shim rotzel lahos of Yosef. How do we know that he can go above even the number six? Talmud lomer yihiyeh. So we said kol ezrach. What was the pasuk called Ezrach? Sorry, I don't have the pasuk in front of me. Anyway, v'niskem chatzi ahin yelepar kachem kager yeh, but it doesn't say kachem kager yeh. So apparently the word yeh is also superfluous, and that's going to teach me that he can give more than the shlosha lugim and even more than six. Yachol yifchos, you might think that let him give two or three. I'm sorry, one or two. Talmud lomar kocha. Now kocha is a mute, and it means you got to give three lugim and not less than three lugim. So now we get back to Rav. My Yosef. Rava says, what does the word Yosef mean? Right? In Rotzel Hosef, Yosef. If it means just going above three, that's not a chiddush. I mean, the number three actually comes from a keves. So Maishna Shlosha de Chazul keves, Shisha Arba Vishisha Chazul Yaf Ayel Par. Elalav, L'chora, what he's saying is that he can give five. So that would mean Ein Keva, Shmamino Ein Keva, and a Sachim. So he could be Misnade, five Lugim, Shmamin. And the Gemara accepts Rava. However, Rav Ashi doesn't like it. Amar Rav Ashi, V'anan lo tran hoch. I don't have that Mishnah the way you have it. But rather, Ein Misnadim log Shnayim v'chamisha. The Mishnah combines Shnayim and Chamisha, our Mishnah. And therefore, by combining it, we should have an analogy between them. And Ma Chamisha Dusha, Ma Shnayim Delo Chazi Klal. Right, in the case of Shnayim, there's no Mosar. I mean, in other words, the neder is completely invalid. There's no such thing as a neder of nesachim of two logim. Is af chamisha nami lo chazu klal. And therefore we're going to say yesh keval in a soch. Yesh keval in a soch. So the Gemara says, "Midi iria hakid isa hakid isa." I don't have to accept Rav Ashi's analogy between 5 and 2. Each one has its own dinim. In the case of 2, you cannot bring such an adava of 2 logim, but in case of 5, you can bring 4 out of 5 because ein keval in a soch. Omar Abaye im timtzol ein keval in a sochim. Ein kevel in Nesachim, I have nothing to ask. But im timtzal lo yesh kevel in Nesachim, ad asara pshitali, but achar asara mi boili. Up till 10, I understand how you make the connections, the combinations. Right? 7 lugim we said was a combination of ayil and a keves. 8 would be a combination of 2 elim, 9, etc., etc. But Eser, Achar Eser, meaning 11, and here we turn to Kuf Daladam and Beis, Mi Boile, that's where I have a suffix. What's the law? So let's see what the problem is with the number 11, 11 login.